Everything seemed fine when Ken came to the family gathering Thanksgiving Day. But by the Monday after, he wasn't feeling so good, a little weak and achy. He made the usual self-diagnosis for such symptoms, thinking he had the flu. But circumstances were far worse than anyone imagined. Ken's particular illness, whatever it was, held on longer than normal and worsened in its debilitating effect. He got more and more exhausted in the next week. After a week of not getting better, just a week ago Monday, his lengthy doctor appointment landed him in the Ray Hospital for tests. They said perhaps they would have to send him up to Greeley to see a heart specialist. By Tuesday morning, it was becoming so difficult for him to have any conversation. Ken asked his mother and sisters to take turns calling him. With only one call a day, he pleaded, the lucky caller reporting to the other two. We heard the hospital was treating him for diabetes. Later that day, the word leukemia entered the picture. But because the family had already had their call earlier in the day, we didn't hear about leukemia until Wednesday. When Mom called Wednesday morning, nothing was conveyed that was clear. Just a little while later, though, we learned Ken was indeed coming to Greeley now by ambulance. He was taken immediately to the Greeley Hospital's ICU. We learned about acute myelogenous leukemia. It moves very fast, and the next morning Ken breathed his last. In that meantime, within those few hours, true love was shared back and forth, very clearly, very directly, and very practically. Even in his weakness, Ken was himself, fairly private, trying not to burden the rest of those who cared, all the time making lucid decisions. Dignity and integrity, that's what he was known for. Our family understands that we here today are the outsiders, taken in by the insiders, the community of Ray, my brother's community. Thank you for the way you have let us be a part of your grieving too. Many people, many who are here in Ray today are grieving over the loss of their dear friend. The way people have been grieving in Ray is not so much with crying, but with talking. It is clear my brother has become the talk of this town, at least during this last week. The way people are grieving here is not so much with tears, but with stories. Everywhere I go, people want to tell their stories about Mr. Monk, about Ken. We all honor his life with these stories. You can imagine the childhood stories I might tell about my brother Ken. But what I want to tell you is that my brother Ken, as an adult, grew up into one of the most remarkable human beings I, and all of you, ever had the privilege to know. How does one have spiritual influence without ever being religious? How does one muster the power to affect so many lives for good without becoming political? We all have lessons to learn from the life of this man who lived these lessons to the end, and the way we go on to honor Ken's life remains with us. May we all find comfort from and use our strength for what we still have to share from all that Mr. Monk